Hello, everyone. We are on YouTube
Mhm.
and we are on Facebook Live, and we're so glad to be with you guys this evening. And we are in El Paso, Texas. If you are in another city, we're so glad that you are joining us. And we live in El Paso, Texas. Here it is actually not very cold, and we wish it was colder here. We have 50s. I mean, I think it is a little bit colder right now. We walked out a few minutes ago. And we're like, oh, it's getting chilly. So we're just so glad you guys are here. We have some really fun things that we're going to share with you all this evening. We have been working on this for 20 years, so don't feel like you
This
have to.
this video for 20
Yes.
years we've been practicing.
Yes. So don't feel like you have to do everything all at once. You can slowly implement. Our The thing that we would be most sad is that if you heard all of this and got so discouraged and so overwhelmed that you did nothing. So let me just let you know that you don't have to implement everything. These are just ideas for you that you can implement. Maybe you don't implement anything and you save them all for next year. That would be totally fine. You just keep records and keep these notes. We sent you PDFs. Hopefully you have those. And if you don't, you can go to frictionlessfamilies.com and sign up for the event. It'll be afterwards, of course, but then we'll send you the PDF that we have with all these notes and details, all the links, so that you don't miss out on anything. So if you're trying to take notes and you're like, oh my goodness, I missed that, you have it in your hands in the PDF. So before we get started, we just want to tell you a little bit about ourselves. So I'm Cheryl Colasar.
I'm Mike.
And we have a ministry called Frictionless Families. My husband was a computer programmer for the last 20 years. And then the Lord called us into family ministry. And it's been about 4 years now. And we are seeing our children growing up. We have one son going into college. He's actually been in college for a year. And Lord willing, we'll be going again in January. And so we just are so blessed to know a lot of y'all. We know many of you all that are joining us, and some of you we don't know. So hopefully we can establish a relationship and a friendship. And please email us, text us, message us. We are here to help you, to support you as families. And so we're going to go ahead and get started so pull out your PDF, get your highlighters, your pen, and we're going to get started.
Well, this was kind of a whim. It just Cheryl came up with the idea for this whole thing. What was it, last Wednesday?
Late at night, we were getting into bed.
This is how it works. Cheryl has the bright ideas, and then I do all the work. So for like an entire week, we've been trying to get all this stuff together, get pastors on board, send stuff around. But the more and more we've worked on it, the more excited I've gotten about it. Because one thing that we've been good at as parents is trying to be really intentional about the Christmas season to make it something that's special. Because I remember one time when I was a child, I was about 10 or 12, so I was still a kid, and we went to Florida. And every 3 years, we would go to Florida roughly from Chicago. Well, that was an expensive trip because my grandparents lived down there. So we would do the 3-day drive in a station wagon with the wood paneling, right? I'm talking 80s, big time, 70s. We get there and there weren't a lot of presents. Because we go to Disney World, go to SeaWorld, we go to the beach. So we did a lot of activities. But on Christmas morning, there weren't very many presents. And I remember one Christmas how very disappointed and how empty I thought that it was because there weren't a lot of presents. And I grew up in a religious, but basically a secular home. My family wasn't Christian, but they had like religious background, but Jesus really was not the center. It was family and it was food and it was fun. That's what Christmas meant. And one of the great things about Cheryl is Cheryl did not grow up in that environment. Their Christmases were not fraught with lots of presents. And it really had to do with like, okay, let's focus on Jesus and what the real reason is for why we're celebrating. So this is one of the things we've really focused on. And so we're going to share 9 things today. And basically there's about 3 different areas. Part of it's going to be inspiration, and Cheryl does a lot of that stuff because she is inspirational. Some of it is going to be practical, so things that you can do with your family. And then some of it's going to be tactical, so that the practical stuff is actually fun for mom and for dad as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about here's some things you can do, and here's some things to protect against so that what you're doing is still fun for everybody. So Cheryl, why don't you start with Christmas? And you have, if you've got this, you'll notice we said it was going to be 9, but you're getting a freebie. So all of them are free, but the last one is even freer, the last S, because we just couldn't chop one out. So, but we're going to try not to dwell on any of these because you have the handout. But we are on the first one, the Christ. We're going to spend a little more time on this one. And so don't be tempted to bail. It's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a 3-hour webinar. It will not. Okay, that's our promise. So go ahead.
So the first one, God actually set it up for us. I don't know if you've been seeing it. It's all over Facebook, but God has set up for us an amazing experience that we're going to be able to give our children this year on December 21st that no other family has experienced since the birth of Jesus. And I'm sure you've heard about it, the Christmas star. So that was when Jesus was born, it was a year of great social unrest, chaos, political unrest, violence. Sounds very similar to what we're experiencing. And what happened is God caused the uniting of 3 stars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. And planets. It says here.
Homeschoolers, we're homeschoolers.
Sorry, I'm going to be very
astronomy. That's our strong part.
And so these merged together. I guess they call them the stars because they call it the Star of Bethlehem. And so these merged together, and that's how the Magi actually found Jesus in Bethlehem. Well, now fast forward, and here we are, 2020. It's also a time of violence, chaos, political, social unrest. It's dark, and the darkest night in the year is at the winter solstice is when the day is the shortest and the night is the longest, and it's going to be December 21st. And that's when those 3 planets are going to merge. And that hasn't happened in thousands of years since Jesus was born. And so I think Jesus is trying to encourage us that he's bringing light. And that is the whole point of keeping Christ in Christmas is he's brought light into the darkness. He's brought light into our life. And so here we are. Some of us maybe are experiencing chaos in our own lives. We're experiencing darkness and we need light. And so over the next 20 days or so till Christmas, I guess it's like 18 now, we'll get into the A, which is Advent. I'll go into more details of how you can actually bring light and life into your home in the midst of darkness and chaos. But Jesus is doing a special gift for each one of us on December 21st. So make sure you mark your calendars, get your kids outside to look at the star, the 3 planets merging together, the Christmas star. And so we just wanted to begin with that.
Hey, the thing, if you want to Google that, it's actually called a convergence. When planets line up and stuff like that, that's the name for it. So you can Google that. It's going to be the 3-planet convergence. And it will be best if you start watching it about a week before, because you'll see the 3 stars slowly coalesce into one bright light. It's going to be super cool. So what a cool God coincidence, and what a really dark year this has been. So second thing on Christmas on your handout is Christmas reading. And most people just kind of blow through Matthew 2 if they read through it. But there's some really deep and some rich and some interesting backstory. So I gave you basically everything that you have. And you'll notice I've got Christmas reading where you start out with Simeon's prophecy and then you do the Magnificat. If in hindsight, I wish I had printed out those opposite, where you start with the Magnificat in Luke. That's where Mary says, my soul magnifies the Lord. So start with that and do that as a reading. That would be really cool. And she's like, wow, what? That's a good conversation starter for your children. And it's short, but is a cliffhanger, right? And it's also interesting that Mary calls God, says that Jesus is going to be her savior. So you have some interesting theological stuff that's going on there. Then you get to Simeon's prophecy, which is Luke 2:25 and 35. And the thing that's really interesting on that is it says that Mary and Joseph marveled at what Simeon was saying. So Mary and Joseph had specific revelation, and yet at the same time, they still didn't really understand the magnificence and the magnitude of what's going to happen through them. It's really interesting. And then you can move on to the location of Matthew's birth, or Jesus's birth, which is Micah, and then Matthew. And then you can talk about the slaughter of the innocents, depending on the age of your kids. That's a pretty dark part of the whole story. But again, it shows you this is a cosmic battle with incredible things at stake. And then, of course, you get into the full narratives. And I really like starting with Luke because it has some great backstory at the beginning, starting with Luke saying, hey, I wanted to take some time and write this all down and capture it because it needs to be captured correctly. And I want to make sure that we got this right. And so you start the whole Gospel of Luke with that idea, and it's a good way to build in some ideas about the scriptural authority and integrity. And then, of course, everybody finishes with Matthew 2. So that's what I've got for Christmas reading. That's a good plan.
And now we have Christmas readers, so we wanted to give you guys some book suggestions to share with your children. One of the things that we have done is every year, one of the gifts that you can get your family is a Christmas reader. So every year, just buy one. Just buy one. Maybe research on Amazon some good ones that are really inspiring, that have beautiful pictures in them. And so these are some that we've collected through the years. I'm not going to overwhelm you, so I just have a few here. And one of the things you can do as well is, and this is super fun, we did this when the kids were younger, is go to the library and pick out 24 library books like this, little readers with pictures, Christmas books, and then come home and you as the mom, wrap them up in tissue paper and then put them like in a basket by the fireplace. Mm-hmm. And then every morning or every night, depending on when you decide you want to do this, have one of the kids go over and get one of the books and then unwrap it. They won't know which one you have. And then you guys can read it together as a family.
It's like having a whole bunch of Christmas presents you didn't have to pay for.
Yes. And then you can return them to the library. Just make a list. Yeah, exactly. Just make a list of what you took. So this is a great one, Christmas Tapestry. So I'm just going to show you. They're all in the notes. This is our all-time favorite. So The Year of the Perfect Christmas Tree. And it's about a little girl whose dad went off to war, and it was their turn. They live in this tiny little town in the Appalachian Mountains. The pictures are beautiful. And they needed to go. They needed to pick out the Christmas tree, but dad was gone. So before he left, he actually took his daughter into the mountains, and they tied a ribbon on the most beautiful tree, but it was up super, super high. And I don't want to ruin it for you, but in the end, they were wondering, how are we going to get this Christmas tree? Dad is not here, but they find a solution, and there's just a beautiful, happy ending. So there's that one. Then this one is the Nativity. This is all just scripture, the Nativity. In this one, there is an
anatomically correct baby Jesus.
Yeah, there is.
So if that's going to be a problem, this might not be your book.
Yeah. But what I like about this is that this book actually, everybody always pictures Mary and Joseph, these very, beautiful people, perfectly coiffed and perfectly clothed. And I like this book because it shows them in a very humble, see, all the pictures are just super down to earth, and, there's nothing fancy. It's got a lot of character and personality. And so this is just pure scripture verses in the book. And then for older students or older kids, you have I Saw Three Ships. And this is one we bought for our family this year. We have not read it yet. It comes highly recommended. And it's a little girl who had to move in with two aunts because her parents had just passed away. And traditions are very different in her home than they were in her home than they are in the grandma's and the aunt's home. And so they always had guests and visitors in her home, and aunt's not like that. So they have three ships that come and three visitors that come and visit. And then this is just wonderful stories. There's so many volumes. I think there's 26 of these, The Best of Christmas in My Heart. And you could just read one a day over dinner or in the morning with your kids if you homeschool. So this is another great book suggestion for you. And then we also have a Happy Birthday Party for Jesus. So that's the H. So we have C, and now we have H. Happy Birthday Party for Jesus. And this has been one of our... Sure.
When Cheryl presented this, I thought it was a terrible idea because I didn't think anybody was going to do it. I was so sure that schools had become so secularized that nobody would say yes. And come to find out, there's a lot of schools that are very open to this. And if you can find a teacher within the school to sponsor it, legally, as long as they don't say no to all outside, they have to let you do it if they get a sponsor. And so that's going to depend where you live. But I thought this was a bad idea, and it's turned out to be an amazing idea. Sorry, babe.
That's okay. So we've been doing this with our children since they were very, very, very young. And what we do actually is we take them to public schools or apartment complexes, and we have a happy birthday party for Jesus. And we also have one, since if with everything that's going on, you may want to just have it in your own home. Just on the day of Christmas, or sometime over the next couple of weeks, have a happy birthday party for Jesus in your home. And all you do is have a cake, sing happy birthday for Jesus, have the Christmas story. And if you have guests or family members that you want to reach out to, you can invite them in and have little goodie bags and just have a birthday party for Jesus.
Thing that's really interesting about this, the happy birthday party on our block, we have some friends that we've known for years at the that live on our block, and they're always talking about God and referencing those types of things. But their children didn't know anything about the Christmas story, absolutely nothing. So they have a nebulous concept of God, as in like the big man upstairs, and no concept of Christianity or Jesus whatsoever. So make sure that you tell the whole Christmas story, and don't assume everybody's heard it, because they haven't. Okay. All right. So next one, that's H for happy birthday. So that moves us on to R for rest. And this is my second favorite point that we're going to make today. And so we really want to make sure that you guys understand, as we're going through this stuff with COVID and all the stuff. COVID's been hard for everybody. It's been really hard on some, financially, spiritually, emotionally. It's been really difficult. So we are not trying to pile on and say, hey, here's something that you have to do. We're not. We're just hoping you like one of these ideas. And then it turns out to be a blessing for you. But one of the biggest things that I'd like to encourage is, especially considering the year, is that everybody gets rest. And that includes mom and dad. So I have a couple things, and there's blanks on your handout. And so the first part's for husbands. Okay. And here's the first one. It says, don't pawn this off on your wife. Okay. It is really easy to come up with some sort of errand that has to be done while all of the Christmas shopping and all the Christmas cooking and all the Christmas cleaning is getting done. So guys, don't do that, and step up this year, because your wife is just as tired as you are. Okay. That's the first one. Second one for husbands is to protect your wife from herself. Okay. If you have a wife that is like, oh, it has to be perfect, and I want to do this, and this year I want to make it super special, so I'm going to do this, and we're going to have a live animal parade, and we're going to make our own Christmas tree. We're going to grow it ourselves in our backyard, right? If you have that kind of wife, it's probably not necessary. And what you may wind up is having a wife in a house that is absolutely gorgeous and a wife that is just whooped. Right. And you don't want that, because she's not going to enjoy it. So help her in that area if you can. And then the last one is husbands, at least take your wife out for dinner at least once, and probably more than that, and have a special time and make it long. Give her a whole evening off and give her something to look forward to, so that she can catch her breath, and you do all the stuff and do all the planning and make it special for her. So that's the first part on rest. And then for the moms or for the wives, just really want to encourage you just to take a chill pill. Okay. When Cheryl and I got married, we didn't have a whole lot of money. We had very, very little money. And I chose to spend it all on our honeymoon, not on the wedding and the reception. So we had a very simple wedding. But Cheryl, like all brides, got worked up about wanting to have stuff that was right. And she was really good about it. She wasn't a bridezilla by any means. Okay. But the most magical moment of the entire day of our wedding day was after we'd gone and everybody pelted us with rice, and we were sitting in the back of a limousine, and we live in El Paso, so we were going up the mountain. The sun was setting, and I realized, they were right. None of the stuff about napkins, whether the sashes and the napkin colors are the same, none of that stuff really mattered. And that was a life lesson for me. That I was like, wow, people get so wrapped up about all these extrinsic things, and really they just don't account for much of anything. So ladies, I just want to encourage you, please rest and have a good time, and give yourself some bandwidth to where, if you wanted to make, like if your tradition is to make pumpkin pie and sweet potato pie, guess what? Nobody can tell the difference anyways, right? They taste exactly the same. So just do one. Right? So do it in a way that you feel like you're serving your family and you're making it special, but to give yourself some breathing room. I please encourage that. And so it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be extensive. It really is, how is it that you spend time with your family, and did you love on them? And then the last thing, as I would be, especially with little ones, is be careful with like grandma's antique ornaments and stuff like that. Maybe you don't put those out for a couple of years when they're little. We've kind of made those mistakes. And so I'm just letting you know, sometimes it's good to have Christmas ornaments that are made out of concrete, and you just use those while they're little. Okay. There you go. So, and then the next one, that's rest. The next one's inspire. And so I would like to talk about, because as I referenced earlier, our Christmases were all about food, family, and fun, which really translated into presents. And one of the things Cheryl did when she came in to the family is, once we had Michael, our first one, we started doing stuff at Christmas that was focused on others. And again, I did not want to do it. I was like, man, this isn't what we do. You're supposed to sit around and just enjoy each other's, and it's supposed to be focusing on family. But Cheryl had kind of changed that and turned it on its ear, and it was a really good experience for all of us, and our kids really liked it. So make sure, this is the blank underneath inspire, make sure that Christmas season has a balance of focusing on family and focusing on others. And so here's just some ideas. Take a second, and if this is one of those things that you're like, oh, that's what we should do, you can focus on shut-ins, because COVID makes everything a little bit different now, right? But you can find a shut-in, or maybe there's a widow or a widower in your church that you can bring something to, or have them over to your house, whatever you're comfortable with. You can decorate for somebody that can't decorate. Everybody does Christmas cookies. One of the things Cheryl did, that we did in Austin, and did we do it here? The nuts? Yeah, everybody does Christmas cookies. So we did like these spicy nuts and these sweet nuts, and it's just different. And you make a little pack and you give those out. That was really effective. And then any other idea that God puts on your heart that says, you know what, I should bless this person. Maybe it's little care packages for people that are out on the street, whatever fits with your guys' family. And one of the things that we've done repeatedly that's been really successful, and by successful, I mean it blesses them and it blessed us, was to go to a retirement home and drop in. And we would normally call them and say, hey, do you have any residents there that nobody visits them? They don't have anybody who's going to come at Christmas. Nobody comes at, and we would always make sure to go and get like a gift for them. And we've got ideas for those on your handouts there. And we were able to team up with like Walmart and other local stores and say, hey, this is what we do. And we go on Christmas Day, and we got people to donate fleece blankets. We got people to donate nice towels, all kinds of stuff. You just count slippers, right? And just the fact that you bring in a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old,
they love it.
man, though the people in those homes, they don't see many children, and just having a child around brightens up their day. It's tremendously satisfying. And I think that's it. We have everything basically that we'd say under there. So now the next one is probably something you've never heard of. And this again was Cheryl's idea.
This is one of our favorites in the whole wide world. We do this year round, and we also do it every day on Christmas Day. But if you already have a lot of traditions that you do on Christmas Day, then do this at another time, maybe on a Friday or a Saturday night. It's the Shabbat meal. I got it from this book. And if you look in your notes, there's a link for the guide. And I keep this with me at the table when we do the Shabbat meal, because it tells you what steps to do, what scriptures to read. It just gives you step by step everything that you need. So I have the list.
Okay, let me jump in. So as you're looking at this thinking, man, do I want to do the Shabbat? And you're looking at all these pages. The truth of the matter is we only use 2.
Yes.
So we use 2 pages out of this whole book. But the book is good, and it gives you the stuff.
Yes, yes. So if you look on your notes, you'll see the things that you need. So you'll need 3 candles, and it'll explain why each child, if you have 3 children, or maybe you take turns if you have a larger family, each child gets to take, a turn lighting the candles. Each of the candles stand for something. You'll have a nice white tablecloth because it stands for the purity of Christ. If you have nice china and silverware, this is your opportunity to bring it out. If you don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. It's more the spirit than the presentation. You'll want your Bible, and in the notes, it'll tell you which scriptures you'll be reading. There will be a reading for the husband, Psalm 121. And then there will be a reading for the wife, Proverbs 31. So the husband will read it for the wife, and the wife will read it for the husband. And then it's just the most beautiful experience because it's a time, an opportunity for you to pour out blessings and encouragement on your family. And if you look the Israeli history, they do this every single Friday night. So every single Friday night, everything shuts down in Israel. Everybody goes home. All the grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles all come together under one room, and they have this special Shabbat meal. And they really attribute this to keeping the families connected, solid, and stable down through the centuries. And I remember one time I was in the mall in Austin, and I love people watching. I was with my three sons, and I was walking around the mall, and there was a booth, and inside the booth there was two people speaking a language I didn't recognize. And so I began to talk to them. I said, "Hey, what country are you guys from?" And come to find out they were Israeli. And I said, "Oh my goodness, are you serious? Well, we have a Shabbat meal." And they were young, they were in their 20s, and they're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Stunned.
They're like, "Here's this American. What does she know about Shabbat?" I told them about all the places in Israel that we've studied. And I told them that we read our Bible, and that's how we know all of these things. And we talked about the Israeli history and so on. And the young man looked at me and he says, "There's no more women like the Proverbs 31 woman that you're describing anymore." And I began to tell him, I said, "Well, I really truly believe there is. I think you're maybe just looking in the wrong places." So I invited him to church. And as I walked off, he looked at me and he said, "Thank you for being our mother." And in the Jewish tradition, being called the mother was a very high compliment. And that's what Proverbs 31 is talking about. And that's why we read Proverbs 31 every week, is because it begins to educate and train the young men. What does a Proverbs 31, what is the kind of woman that you should be looking for to marry? And it gives the dad, the husband, an opportunity to affirm the wife for being the Proverbs 31 woman.
And so, to instruct the boys, it's like, this is what you're looking for.
Yes, yes. So the Shabbat meal is beautiful. You'll have sparkling grape juice. We always have these tiny little crystal glasses that we pour the juice into, and then we all hold it up and we do cheers, and we, hit each other's glasses and just have a wonderful time of fellowship. And so the Shabbat meal is something that I would encourage you to try to implement, even if you can't implement it at Christmas. Implement it sometime later on in the year.
And one practical tip, if you want to do this, which I really, really recommend, because the getting to do the blessing, when dad does a blessing for all the kids in the family and then blessing the mom, that's really kind of that's the highlight of the whole thing. Practical thing is, this whole Shabbat thing takes about 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And then you sit down and enjoy your
meal. Have your meal. Prepare the type of meal that can sit for 20 minutes. So that you're not rushing through the Shabbat. It's like, oh my gosh, we got to get these steaks off the grill, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want that. So have something the type of meal that can sit for 20 minutes while you do the Shabbat, and you can really relax and enjoy it.
It's also beautiful there. There's a beautiful thing also in the Shabbat meal. It's called the washing of the hands. Mm-hmm. And there's a bowl of water that I set out next to Mike with a towel, a pretty towel. And the family, each person comes one by one and dips their fingers into the water, and it's a symbolism of sanctification. And then Mike dries their hands and prays over them and encourages them. So it's just a beautiful tradition. We love that one.
Guys, I cannot type and talk at the same time. It's like I can only do one thing: making toast. Okay. Techno?
Yeah.
All right, next. We're on next one. Techno. I wish I could say I made this up. I stole those from Ed Young. I was on staff at his church for a while, and he did a techno talk. And screen time is through the roof right now for kids. A lot of parents are very concerned. They should be. What we have done frequently is to take Christmas, the Christmas season, and set the whole month or part of that month off as Techno. And basically what we do is we try to eliminate or drastically reduce the amount of time that we are spending isolated entertaining ourselves on the computer or on gaming console or whatever that is. So we still watch movies. We'll still watch educational YouTube stuff and things like that. So it's not like we try to be Amish, right? But what we're trying to do is not isolate in front of a screen. And every time we do it, there's always a little bit of pushback and some little grumpy faces for a little while. But within 2 or 3 days, the kids don't even miss it. And they always tell us, and we always fall for the same thing. they always say, it's like, man, I really, really enjoyed it. And the kids, they get along, they learn how to play again and to cooperate and to um, just function as a family. And then in January, we always go back to the same old, right? We're like, why don't we just keep doing this? But we don't.
Actually, our kids only get 30 minutes of computer time a day.
Yeah,
so,
we're not too
we're
crazy on tech.
we're pretty strict.
And so, hey, this is just a special for you guys. If you are concerned that you have tech addiction issues in your family, and I wouldn't be surprised, so a lot of people do, don't worry about that. We have an entire talk that we do as part of Frictionless Families for our ministry. And in your notes, there's a highlights reel. You can browse through that. And if it looks interesting to you, I'm putting it on sale for today and for tomorrow for $9.95. And so shameless product plug for there, but that will help you.
It's really good, very eye-opening.
Yeah, talk a lot about why, what's going on inside of the brain and the neurological pathways that makes this much more than a willpower problem. So it's just good to know what you're dealing with.
We actually had our sons watch. Actually, they've had to go to these seminars a lot so they can do it in their sleep. But once they began watching the tech video that he's talking about, our sons began to self-regulate even more because they were like, oh my goodness, this is what's happening to my brain. This is what that company's trying to do. They're trying to hijack my brain. And so they began to self-regulate. So get the DVD, we don't have DVD form, do we? That's a download. And so show it to your students, show it to your kids.
Okay, all right, next one. We're moving on. This is movies. So obviously every family's got different standards for movies. I have picked a couple of movies here that I know probably everybody's watching. And what I chose for this is not A Miracle on, 34th Street? I can never remember the number. Miracle or It's a Wonderful Life. I picked ones that I know everybody's watching that turn out to be just entertainment, but they have some great themes. So I'm just going to touch on each one. Elf, just about everybody's favorite Christmas movie now. Elf has some great themes, and what you have in here is some discussion questions. Some of them are funny to keep the kids engaged, and some of them are thought-provoking. And so you've got questions for little kids and big kids in most of these. But the themes for Elf are being comfortable with who God made you. Elf was 100%, Buddy was 100% genuine. Right? He didn't change anything to impress anybody. He was just who he was. So refreshing. And it talks about what is really Christmas cheer. So that's a good one. Other one, Polar Express. If you haven't watched that, that is a treasure. But really, that is the whole film is about doubt and wanting to believe, but having these nagging doubts. Well, every single adult has nagging doubts about their faith. Kids need to know it's like that is part of the walk. And so that is a great conversation starter. And then there's a subcontext where the little kid named Billy, and he's kind of an outlier, and your kids run across outliers. Those kids are a little bit different. Well, we're not supposed to be respecters of persons. We're supposed to love all people equally. So Elf is a great way, and Polar Express is a great way to talk about that. And then all versions of A Christmas Carol, right, except maybe for Scrooged, all right? They all talk about basically what is the true duty of man. That was Jacob Marley's big revelation at the beginning of the movie. He sets the tone for it, and then you see the consequences with past, present, and future of what happens when you ignore the call of what is to be for what you're supposed to be for other men. Great movie. One we just discovered. We've only watched this once. Max, The Christmas Candle.
I watch it every year on my own, even if the boys.
Yeah.
I'm in a home of all boys, so we don't watch very many chick flicks, and that one's borderline chick flick. So
it's good.
It's really touching and sweet and wholesome. Very cute.
Yeah, but it has a great question that runs through it about the difference between faith and works in our lives. Undercurrent through that entire movie. It's like, which one how do you balance the two? And then the Peanuts movie, the new one that just came out, you get to finally see the little red-haired girl's face, and you get to find out how Snoopy and the Red Baron finally end, right? It's just a great completer. But the discussion, the themes, the importance of character, because Charlie Brown is a great kid, right? But he is just hampered by self-loathing and self-doubt. Those are great themes for kids. And then let's see, one last one, The Grinch, one of my favorites. It's actually what's the true meaning of Christmas. It's shocking that the Who's are all singing with the same amount of joy, and they don't have any Who pudding. right? It's an amazing story. And then Charlie Brown Christmas, the cartoon one that everybody knows about with Linus playing the piano. The attitude and intent are important, because when you look at Charlie Brown's tree, you notice he did the best that he could with what he had. And so it brings up some great questions: are what are attitude and intent worth? And sometimes that counts for a lot. Sometimes it doesn't count for a lot. And there's some balance in that. If you're trying to disarm a bomb, your attitude and your intent doesn't really matter a whole lot. It's just, did you get it done or not, right? So there's some talking about, especially the dads would like to talk about, and then finally being slow to judge others. So that's it for movies, and let's go on to Advent.
Okay, this is one of my favorite ways to keep Christ in Christmas, because it's just so, if you follow an Advent plan, you don't have to really think very much. You can just pick up your book and immediately go into autopilot. So if you're just overtaxed already as it is, doing Advent is probably the first place to start in keeping Christ in Christmas. And so simply put, Advent actually means the coming or the arrival, and it begins 4 Sundays before Christmas, so the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And what I would encourage you to do is get a wreath, and then you can put your own candles in there. So you can buy Advent wreaths, but they're really expensive. So you can make your own wreath, or candelabra with 4 or 5 candles. You can actually have 5, one that you light on Christmas Day, but you have 1 candle per week Sunday before Christmas Day. And so each candle represents something. And so the first one will represent, the first candle, we should have lit it 2 weeks ago, symbolizes hope. So if this is new to you, I didn't grow up doing Advent. This is something that I didn't, learn about until older in life. So it's the prophet's candle. It is the Old Testament prophets, especially Isaiah, as they waited for the Messiah's arrival. Then you have faith. That's the second candle. Micah foretold the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. You have the third candle, which is the shepherd's candle, symbolizes joy. Then you have the fourth candle, which is the angel's candle, represents peace. And then the fifth one, which is Christ's candle, which you light on Christmas Day. And so I have many resources that you can use. If you like music, this is the one I would recommend for you. It's Hallelujah, Cultivating Advent Traditions with Handel's Messiah. If you know Cindy Rollins, if you have been in the homeschooling world, you've heard of Cindy Rollins. So we did that last year, and we went through the Handel's Messiah from the very beginning to the end, listened to about 10 minutes every day over dinner, and then discussed it. And they give you readings as well, and poetry and different things. If you like poetry, this is a poem a day from Advent to Epiphany. This is also in your notes, and this is a new resource to us. So there's poets from great poets, ones that you guys have all heard of: William Blake, Yeats, Ladkins, Arnold. So all of these great poets, and then they have an explanation of what the poem means, and you can discuss it with your kids. Then we have, if you like art, there's this one, and it's one piece of art every day from, the beginning of Advent to the very end. And the one for the first day was just breathtaking. And it's God, in the beginning, he talks about how he created the world. And then in John, we talk about he's the light of the world. And so here we see God creating the world. And, he's full of light, and he's setting the boundaries of the world. And so each of these paintings, they're fantastic, and they each describe a different theme for Advent for each day. And so if you like art, I would recommend that one. But of course, if your children are young, I would obviously start with the Advent Storybook, 25 Bible stories showing why Jesus came. Because Christmas, we are celebrating, at Christmas time, we celebrate the birth of Jesus, but Advent celebrates why did Jesus come? And then you spend the next 24 days. Why did Jesus come? Well, we're sinners. The world is in darkness. The world is in bondage to sin. And so and then on Christmas Eve, you slowly begin talking about how the promised one, the Messiah, would come and set his people free. And so Advent, there's our notes for Advent, the A.
All right, so we're wrapping up. We're on the last 2 S's. One is just study. And so I just did this for fun. This is for everybody. I put together a little fun Christmas quiz that you can do. You don't have to do the work on it. Some of the questions in there are trick questions. Some are fun questions. Some are funny on purpose. And so that's just a freebie. You guys can do that with your kids over dinner one night. And then the last one, this is the freebie of the freer of the freebies. This is Santa Lucia.
And this one is hysterical. So if you're looking for something fun that is going to make your kids talk about for the rest of the year and can't wait for the next year when we do this, this actually was inspired. How many of y'all know of Andy Griffith, the Andy Griffith Show with Barney Fife? I'm sure y'all know who he is. I know you guys know who he is. Anyways, we were watching one of the episodes. It was season 4, episode 20, and it was Barney singing the Santa Lucia song. And, obviously he blew it. He didn't do real well. And then Gomer started singing. I don't know if y'all know this, but Gomer speaks with a really squeaky voice. Well, come to find out, he is a trained musician. He has the most beautiful voice. It's very deep, beautiful, so incredible. But yes. And so everybody hears Gomer singing and they're looking at Barney like, we don't want him singing it. We want Gomer singing it. So anyways, long story short, that's what inspired this tradition for us, because a couple days later, I began to read about Santa Lucia, and I found out she was a young girl who would take bread to people who were out, the martyrs in the catacombs, and she actually was martyred. And she wore a white gown, a red sash, and a wreath with candles and she'd hold bread in her hands as she would walk through the forest, the woods, to take the bread to the people in the catacombs.
The reason she had the candles was so that she could carry more bread.
Yes, so
she's trying to keep her hands free because she's trying to provide food.
So the feast of Santa Lucia is celebrated every year on December 13th. This year, it's going to be the Sunday. And so the first year that we celebrated, I got this bright idea. My mom is such a good sport. She is a ham and she's a character if you haven't met her. And so I said, Mom, can you dress up as Santa Lucia and then knock on my door and I'll send the kids to the door and you and Grandpa be standing there and you bring in the loaf of bread and I'll press play and we'll have Barney Fife singing Santa Lucia in the background. It'll be early in the morning. You'll have the candles lit. I'll have a candlelit breakfast. And it'll be hysterical and be super fun and the kids will love it. And so I got the kids up early. I said, hey, somebody's at our door. And the neighbor across the street, she watches everything we do. So she was like looking out the window and she asked me later what was going on over there. And I had to tell her my mom dressed up as Santa Lucia. And so the kids all go running to the door and they open it and there's Grandma with the candles. They're LED, by the way, so that she didn't, catch her hair on fire.
A big wig, right?
And she had a big wig on, and she had the wreath on, and it was a white sheet that she made a V-neck into a sash, and then carrying a loaf of bread. And she comes in very ceremoniously, just walking very stately. And I'm playing Barney Fife in the background, and we laughed so hysterically. We were just hysterical.
We still laugh about
laughing about it. And so we're going to do that again this Sunday morning. I've already warned everybody we're going to be getting up super early on Sunday morning. I'm going to get breakfast ready. We're going to have candles lit everywhere. My mom's all ready. We even got a bigger wreath. Last time it was just this tiny little wreath. This year I got her a ginormous wreath and big tall pillar candles from the dollar store. They're LED. You just put two AAAs in there. And so we're going to put all the lights on there and celebrate Santa Lucia. And of course, once again, it's light. Her name, Lucia, means light. And so here we are once again. The theme keeps coming back to light. The Christmas star. We talk about Advent. We talk about happy birthday. It's all light. We are all walking in darkness and we need the light of Jesus to set us free. And so that is how we're ending our evening talk this evening. Is just reminding you of the light of Jesus. He is the light of the world. If there is any darkness in your life, in any place, in your marriage, in your children, in your business, in your church, if there is any darkness of any kind, Jesus, the light of the world, wants to come and pierce the darkness with his light and give you hope, encouragement. He wants to give you a Christmas miracle. And it begins with opening your heart to him. It begins with repentance. It begins with surrendering and faith and trust in him. So please be encouraged. Don't feel like you have to do everything. Pick one thing. If you do the Santa Lucia, though, I want to know about it. And I want you to send me pictures.
We want pictures.
Please send pictures of your Santa Lucia. Get your mom to dress up. Those of you who have grandmas, that will make your your grandma just the star of your kid's life. And I'm sure she already is the star, but it make her even more the star. So thank you all so much for joining us. Did you have anything else you wanted to
Yeah,
say?
I just have a practical question. If you guys liked this, we went back and forth on the time. Is 8 o'clock a good time? And I'd really like to get some feedback as to whether or not this is too early, too late, or just right. And other than that, watch your inboxes. We're about ready to start doing videos again and sending those things out. So thank you guys. Have a great Christmas. Don't
Merry
pile on.
Christmas.
Yep, just pick one or two of these and enjoy them.
And we love all of you guys. Thank you for watching, and please stay in touch. And we'll see you guys next time. God bless y'all. Merry Christmas.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay.